Hey everyone, so in this tutorial I'm going to show you how to get a likeness in a portrait, which is something that people have said that they're interested in learning more about. And I'm also going to show you another example of how to crosshatch when you're doing a portrait of a face. So this is a bit of a weathered looking older man, and we're going to go through a number of different things that will help you in your portraits. Okay, so my first tip whenever you're drawing a portrait is start with really light pencil marks. You don't want to start by drawing too dark and too hard too early, because one thing that you're going to spend a little bit of time doing at the very beginning is getting the proportions. Okay, so proportions. The most important thing that I want you to always remember is that there's one eye in between the two eyes, and then there's an equilateral triangle going from the eyes to the tip of the nose. Okay, so those are the ones that I really like to always remember. So here I'm showing you again. See, there's a space. The space in between the eyes is the length of the eye, right? So you can fit another eye in between the two eyes. I hope that makes sense. If you have tried other videos on portraits, but then you end up with this weird looking generic face, it's because you're not doing a good enough job when you then go to do your portraits of observing the shapes and the specific details that make a person look like whoever they are. So the problem with those tutorials is that they're good for getting a sense of the proportions, but where things sort of fall apart is on the likeness. So what I want to do a lot of today is to show you how I go about getting the likeness. So generally, I want you to remember a couple basic things about proportions, but then I want you to also use all of your observational drawing skills that you've hopefully been building. If you've been watching a lot of my videos, you're learning all these different observational drawing skills, right? So by observational drawing skills, I mean that you're looking really closely at your reference photograph, or if you're looking in a mirror and you're drawing from life, and you're using observational skills to then draw them on your 2D surface. So going back to proportions, the other thing that's important to remember is that the eyes are halfway in the middle of the face, right? So the top of the head, down to the bottom of the chin, the eyes are going to be halfway. So that's one of those things that people are always like, wait, what? And then you look and you go, oh, you're right. It is. The eyes are halfway down. People a lot of times put them a little bit too high up, where essentially the forehead would go. So that's another one to always remember. And then you want to look at the shapes of the eyes. So this is an interesting thing in that the eyes are actually not perfectly symmetrical. So if you look at yourself, or if you look at a photograph of whoever you're drawing, you're going to notice that those eyes are not actually perfectly symmetrical. Now, sometimes if you're drawing people who are say like a model or something like that, they tend to have more symmetrical faces. But most people, their faces are really not perfectly symmetrical. So these are some of the things that I want you to look for in your drawing. And these are the kind of things that you're sort of like unlearning some of the assumptions that you often have, where if you look at some of the other videos that people have on YouTube on, proportions and drawing faces and portraits and things like that, you'll notice that they sometimes draw the eyes exactly the same, but the eyes are seriously they're not identical. So there's symmetry, of course, in the face, but they're not identical. So if you'll notice, here, the shape of the eye on the left, kind of different than the shape of the eye on the right, but it works. Okay, so now I'm going to show you how to crosshatch a portrait. So crosshatching is one of those things that it can start out looking a little bit weird, and you have to kind of get over the beginning of it, where it sort of looks a little bit like the hatch marks almost look like fur on top of the face and not like shadow and value, which is eventually what you want it to look like. So, a lot of times it looks bad at first, but it gets better over time. So you gotta have to get past that issue a little bit at the beginning. So I have some other tutorials that I'll link to as well that are specifically explaining some of the things about how to draw, noses and lips and things like that. But one thing that's very important whenever you're crosshatching is that you want to think about the direction of line and how you can use your marks to help show the value not only like the shading and how dark and light things are, but also a sense of the 3D form. Because again, the face isn't flat, right? So you want to be showing that the nose is protruding, right? Or that the lips are protruding. And that can be kind of challenging to do just with lines. But, it's the kind of thing that as you keep doing it and you keep layering, you get a little bit more and more of a sense of that. Now, when you're cross-hatching eyes, one thing that you want to make sure that you do, and you'll notice this already on the right-hand eye, but also the left one that I'm doing right now, is that I always want to leave a highlight. So you want to have that darkened iris right next to a light spot, and that's what will make it look more eye-like and more kind of like that glassy look. And you also want to pay attention to the area around the eye in addition to just the eye itself. So the eyelid and then sort of like that area underneath. This person has kind of like, he's older, so he has kind of like droopier eyelids and that they're not as formed. Like you can't see the upper eyelids as much because he's kind of like older and stuff. So, and then his eyebrows are very, very, like they're very bushy. So he didn't have as much space like above his eyes. So these are some of the things that you want to notice. I know that these are kind of like particulars, for this specific one, but these are the kind of details that will make the person you're drawing kind of come to life more. And when I drew the lips, I noticed that the top lip was a little bit darker than the bottom lip, and that his lips are very thin, like they're not as full or thick as, lips might be in another picture, right? So again, these are the kinds of things that you want to just be noticing. In terms of the nose that I'm doing right now, you want to kind of get a sense of three-dimensional quality of the nose. So you want to look at like the ball of the nose and kind of get a sense of like, I do sort of like circular motions around the ball of the nose. And then I do like these other lines that are kind of like shape the bridge of the nose. So just kind of look at mine to get a sense of some of the types of direction of line that I like to use. The other thing, if you notice around the nose, by making there be more shadow, that kind of like helps pop the nose a little bit more, because again, the nose protrudes. So you're trying to make it clear that the nose isn't on the same plane as, like the cheeks are, right? Because the nose protrudes. So these are all some things that you just want to kind of like work on. And again, I mentioned at the beginning, like it kind of looks a little bit weird at the beginning, but as you keep going and refining, it starts to look a little bit better. So towards the end, and you can do this earlier on too, is I make sure that kind of like the edges are the way that I want them. I also want to make sure that I don't have like a really dark outline around the face. You'll notice that the edges are pretty soft. Generally, whenever you're doing anything that's a person, you're going to be using softer edges. Like you don't really want a lot of hard edges. It will look flatter and not as realistic. So, I spend some time towards the end just kind of like adding some details, like I might want to do a little bit more in the forehead, or, this guy doesn't really have any hair right now, but maybe that's something that I would add. Just kind of play around with it, refine it a little bit more. I'm adding, a little bit more value towards the side of the face. If you enjoyed this video, please go ahead and hit the subscribe button. Also hit the like button, and if you can leave a comment, that helps get it out to a lot more people. For whatever reason, YouTube likes when people leave comments. So if you have a specific question, ask the question, but even just something like thanks really helps to get the video out to more people. And as I've been growing this channel, I really appreciate everyone that watches, comments, likes the videos. It really helps a ton. So I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you learned something new. I'm going to be recording a lot more portrait content in this new year. And thank you again, and I'll see you soon.